if we can use marketing in a good way instead of in the bad way that we see out there that is only profit driven, then we're part of a movement that is actually going towards business for good.
Hi, and welcome to the Driven Female Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, award-winning business coach, value whisperer, and founder of the Dream Clients Blueprint, your step-by-step guide to communicating your true value with confidence and attracting more of your ideal clients. To help you start attracting more of your ideal clients immediately, I've put together a special free training for you that you can claim at melittacampbell.com/training. On this show each week, I bring you practical advice and tried and tested techniques through my own experiences and those of other successful women in business. Our goal is to help you dream bigger and confidently achieve more in your business and in life. My guest today is Sarah Santacroce. For more than a decade, Sarah ran a successful LinkedIn consulting business, which inspired a yearning in her to create a global movement that encourages people to bring more empathy and kindness into their business and marketing. As a hippie turned business coach, Sarah has written 2 books, hosts the Humane Marketing podcast, and works with heart-centered entrepreneurs to question their assumptions when it comes to marketing and give them permission to market their business their way, the gentle way. Today on the show, myself and Sarah are going to explore the question, what if we replaced the sales funnel with a gentle sales path? And listen to the end of the show as well, because I'm running the landing page challenge this month and I would love to invite you to get involved. I'll tell you all about that after my interview with Sarah. So, hi Sarah, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us again today.
Oh, I'm so excited for this. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Melitta.
Yeah, me too. And I'm really excited to dig in because we've known each other for a long time and you've always been about more quieter, gentler marketing, which you've now rebranded as humane marketing, which I think is really great. And you've posed the question, what if we don't have to have a sales funnel, but more of a gentle sales path? So I'm really interested to dig into that and see what you believe a sales path is, how we can do this and sell in a way that feels more natural, but still gets results. And I think that's something that everyone's going to be saying, yes, please, no more funnels. But before we dive into that, I'd love it if you could share with us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks so much for kind of introducing the topic and let me talk a little bit about me and more about what I stand for. And like you say, yes, gentle marketing, that was kind of the initial term that I used because I do feel like us introverts, we're just not big fans of any kind of pushy bro marketing or selling that, kind of uses all these manipulative techniques that we see so much out there. And so that's what I feel like I'm called to do, is I'm called to create a movement, or I call it a humane marketing revolution. So that's where I'm at today. That's what I'm creating. I didn't start out that way. As entrepreneurs, we go through these journeys of obviously finding out who we are. Like I always am so impressed by entrepreneurs who've been in business like you yourself, over 10 years, how much we learn about ourselves. And that's definitely part of my journey as well. So I started out as a LinkedIn consultant, helping people and companies with using LinkedIn for sales, for job search as well initially. So yeah, I've come a long way, I'd say.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I think that's how we first met actually, was you helped me with my LinkedIn
Right.
way back in the day with great results, I have to say. And I remember having a conversation with you about, we're both introverts, and what you found with LinkedIn is that there were a lot of introverts in that space because they could hide a little bit. They could do the networking and connection, but not drain their energy so much or have to have that face-to-face interaction.
Right.
And you mentioned there about, we learn so much about ourselves and we evolve through that. Do you think that having that foundation, starting there as a LinkedIn consultant really helped you to find the path to everything that you're doing now? Was that the seed, or was it something else completely?
It was definitely part of the journey. I think what I learned in the 10 plus years of running this LinkedIn business is all the marketing trades, is putting myself out there. Basically, much of the success, I think, had to do with the summits that I created every year, right? I called it the LinkedIn Challenge. And I think that's how we first connected, right? You're part of that LinkedIn Challenge. And so, yeah, in a way, stepping out there, but stepping out there in an introverted way, and I know you like this as well, kind of shining the spotlight on others. That's what we're good at as introverts as well, right? Like, yes, showing up and taking up space, but then also kind of highlighting others. And that's what's great about these. It's like, yes, I'm the host, but, here are all my friends and people that I align with. And let me shine the spotlight on them. And so that's really what I feel like I did with the LinkedIn challenges. And it created a huge network for me. And yeah, from there, I then realized, okay, a lot of this marketing stuff is a bit too pushy for me. So the first year was 2008, kind of the official year when I started the business. So it was in the middle of the social media boom and all these big gurus out there were creating their big giant businesses, and they told you what to do and how to do it. And a lot of it kind of, I just followed along, but I didn't really align with it. And so all of this, looking back, that's how I'm connecting the dot. I'm like, yeah, you can't just from day one go out there and say, I'm going to create a humane marketing revolution if you have not actually spent, almost 15 years in this online marketing world. So that's how I connect the dots looking back. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree. When, my background is in marketing and communications, it's what I was doing for nearly 2 decades before I went online with my business. And then when I did, I could see marketing happening, but not in any kind of way that I'd ever experienced or learned. And it was very hyped up. It was very extreme. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. It doesn't feel, and I tried bits of it. And whenever I did get resistance from my community saying, what's wrong with you? What have you done? Yeah. And quite a few of my community, loyal people who had even been clients before, left because they said, I don't want any part of this, which made me realize, take a step back and say, yeah, actually, what they're teaching doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't align with my values or what I understand marketing to be about. So I gave myself full permission to ignore all of them. And then to have someone like yourself go out there saying, yeah, me too, but I'm starting a revolution. It's like, yes, I'm all in. Come on, let's do this. So tell me more about this humane marketing and humane sales revolution, and what's the vision for that?
Yeah, so the vision is really to create a movement of like-minded people who are saying, yeah, we're tired of what's out there. We are tired of kind of following 6 steps for sales success or, this and that template approach. And we're just wanting to be more human and more humane in our marketing and sales. And a lot of that has to do with showing up as humans and not just showing up as business owners. And I think that's not what we see out there. What we see from the big gurus is that you have to be a certain way and you have to behave a certain way in order to, be successful and create a 6, 7, 8-figure business. That's all the hype we always hear. And I'm actually saying, well, let's just go back to first learn to be human. And that sounds weird. How do you learn to be human? But it just actually means becoming more conscious, becoming more aware of who we really are, what our story is, our values, our worldview. Because what I've noticed is, and you just said the same thing, right? If clients are not a good fit, then we're just miserable. We're not actually creating a business that we enjoy being in. And so it's so super important to find out first about who we are, who's the human behind, the business owner, so that we can bring more of us into our marketing, more of us into our sales, to resonate on that different frequency and to actually repel those that are not aligned with the human that we are. it's purposeful that I use hippie turned business coach. That is intentional. It's like, yeah, people who are like, what is this? That has nothing to do with business. They're like, oh, thanks. I'm going to go look somewhere else. And that's great, because what it does, it actually helps me. If I bring more of me to my marketing, that means that people who resonate with me are going to come into my little world, right? And so that's the difference. I feel like it's not a template approach. It's really an approach where we are also required to be a bit more responsible, meaning we can't just follow someone else's template. We actually have to figure out, well, what works for me? What do I want out of this business? Who am I? Takes looking at your story and all of that. So yeah, that's how I see humane marketing being different. And then, of course, it's really about the generation who cares. So we care first for ourselves, then for our clients, and we also care for the planet. Because if we can use marketing in a good way instead of in the bad way that we see out there that is only profit driven, then we're part of a movement that is actually, going towards business for good. And that's what I believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yes, we're looking at sales and marketing because that's how we reach our clients and bring them in. But we start off with all of day one was, how do you decide who you are and what you really want? Because you have to show up as yourself. As you say, if you're going to attract those right people into your business and the right opportunities, and that just saves you so much time and effort as well. If you're trying to market to everyone and get upset about, oh, this kind of person doesn't like me, what can I do for them? You're just going to end up exhausted and not have that impact that you could really have, that transformation on not just yourself and your clients, but at the planet, as you say. And then we're finishing up with self-care and compassion, because that has to go with it. And the more I do this, the more I realize that success has to come from self-love and self-respect, because if you don't have that, you don't have the boundaries in place. You don't give yourself permission to show up as your best self and maintain your energy and focus, so you bring the best of you and your knowledge to your clients. So it really has to all come together. So I love everything that you just shared there.
Likewise. Thank you.
So tell us about sales funnel versus a gentle sales path.
Yeah. So I've gotten a bit allergic of some of these marketing terms out there over the last few years. Also, definitely reading Brene Brown's work and the actual energy of words. And every time I look at some of these marketing words, I'm like, wow, that's actually very inhumane. If you actually think of a funnel, right, and picture that, well, how does it look like? Well, it looks like this. And then we shove all our people into the same kind of funnel. It gets very uncomfortable at the bottom of this funnel. We're all squished together, and it's very, very inhumane. It makes me think of slaughterhouses, actually. So very, very inhumane. And I was thinking, well, is this really how I want to treat my clients? To rush them, push them, squeeze them through a funnel to just obtain kind of this outcome that I have in mind? Or on the other hand, do I want to give the power back to them, give the power back to the client, and let them leisurely walk through my gentle sales path instead? And there's different options on this path. There's benches on the paths as well. There's nature. There's exits as well, as we just said before. Not everybody needs to go through my funnel. What if the wrong people end up at the bottom of my funnel? So it is just a much more humane and gentle approach to sales. And the outcome is even better, because really who then arrives. And instead of the bottom of the funnel, I call it my serene garden, where I then sit down and have a gentle sales conversation with people. Who arrives at the end of that path are the right kind of clients, are the dream clients, because they have been empowered to take their own path. And that is not just, another word that I'm allergic to is the lead magnet, right? Again, it's kind of this sucking effect where we're like, okay, you all come to me. What if instead we used signposts? And again, the idea is exactly the same, but we put different signposts on this path. And so the client then decides, oh, that's, I love this podcast episode. Let me go from there to her free course. What if I go from there to one of her workshops, and then from there, so the idea is the same. It's just that there's more power for the client. I think that's what humane marketing is a big piece as well. It's kind of like the revolution is actually treating our clients as smart, humane, conscious beings that they are, and giving them the power back. So that's the difference between the funnel and the path.
Yeah, I love so much of what you just shared there. And yeah, this whole idea of the language, like you say, the squeeze page, it sounds horrible. And
that's true. That's another one.
Yeah, one phrase that I hear all the time, and it just makes my skin crawl, is like, you have to scratch the pain until it bleeds and then sell them the Band-Aid. It's like, oh my gosh,
my
no.
God, yeah.
Why do you want to make people feel bad? I much prefer being my client's champion along the way. As you say, these are smart individuals that have free will and choice. They know what they want, but they just need some help to get there sometimes. And sometimes they're not quite sure exactly what that help looks like. So I love this idea of having a nice gentle path with some benches where they can hang out for a while, or a signpost to go and to get more information. And also thank you for giving us permission, because the sales funnel, as you say, it's this direct, they go from here to there and then they pop out on the other end. But that's not my experience. When my clients come to a call with me, they've had this whole relationship. They've popped in at some point, they've read a blog post or listened to my podcast or seen a social media post, then they've done a free course or a challenge, or they've had this whole journey. And that journey is always very individual to that person and what they're learning before they come to a call. And some that process takes a day, and some that takes a year. But it's really interesting. And I always felt, I should perhaps restructure this so it is more of a funnel, and it's more direct, and it's more focused and strategic. But actually hearing your description of a path is like, actually, I think that's what I've kind of unconsciously created. And it feels really nice. It does feel so nice having those calls with people who know who you are. They've already experienced you, and they like your approach, and they see it as different. They feel a very different way. And then you just have such a nice natural conversation with them, rather than feeling like having to push them through like
no more convincing. Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't think you can convince people, really. It doesn't ever feel right when you have to do that. So it makes all the difference. So I would love to dive into some of your wording here, your language. So what is the difference, do you think, between this lead magnet that sucks people out and a signpost that guides them?
Yeah. So again, it's most of it is the energy. It's just a different energy to the word. The intention is different in that with a lead magnet, usually the typical lead magnet, or some people call it freebie as well, you have usually, depends on who teaches it, but usually it's kind of like, let me just put something together so that I can get people's emails, and then let me send them, like, get them into a click funnel, and then have them buy this thing and then that thing and then the bigger ticket thing, right? So that's how kind of the pushy marketing people teach it, where, as you just described, a signpost is almost like we're not necessarily doing it with an intention to sell, even though it somehow leads to a sale, right? And like you said, sometimes that takes a day and sometimes that takes a year. But the intention is not the immediate sale. The intention is to invite them into your gentle sales path, to have different options on this sales path as well. The lead magnet is usually just this one thing, right? And then how do you expect to get people from your ebook to immediately, buy your $2,000 package from you? It's just kind of a big step, where if you have these different options on your gentle sales path, then again, people are doing this without you actually having to do any effort or without you pushing. And people are probably wondering now, what is a signpost then? So a signpost can be literally every kind of content you create. So it can be a podcast episode. It can be you as a guest on someone else's podcast. It can be your newsletters. It can be, yes, a freebie that they download, a book, you have your book and I have my book. So all of these separate things are basically signposts. And the invitation is really an invitation. Come and see how I look at business, or I look at my expertise. How am I different? How does this feel different? So that's the difference between the two. And I think a lot of it is the intention, that it's not like, oh, I'm going to send you 5 emails, and then the 5th one, I'm going to sell you a $5,000 program.
Yeah. So if people are empowered to take their own path and go their own way, does your path have a sort of destination? Is that Serene Garden? Is that the sales call or your product? Or how does that work? Because I'm just thinking, or what makes up the bricks of the path? Is that email? Is there something specific that you hang everything off?
Yeah, it's definitely email for me. It could be also something else for you, depending on where your marketing superpower lies. So it can be a series of videos. You can lead them to a free online course, for example, where they get to know you better. And so then obviously once they've listened to a few free podcast episodes or gotten you free emails, you're still kind of pointing them into the direction that you want, depending on what your main thing is that you want to sell, whether it's one-on-one coaching, whether it's a program, whether it's your community. So yes, you're still pointing them into that direction, but you're not making it so obvious and so short. I think that's one of the main differences is in the funnel, it's very short, right? The energy that the client feels is an energy of being rushed through this funnel. In the Selling Like We're Human book, I talk about this story. While we were living in California, the kids were still small and we were invited at all these birthday parties. And in the US, these birthday parties are like literally 90 minutes. And it's always the same format. It's like, at least back then and where we were, it was like that. So first you come in, take off your shoes and do the activity that they had planned for the day. And then immediately after that, you had to wash your hands and then go into another room. And while you were in the other room having cake, already the next birthday party started in the main activity room. And it just felt so almost disgusting and rushed, right? And that's what I think people feel when they're kind of pushed through these funnels. And it feels like, oh, this person, all they want is just to sell me their next thing. Because then that's another thing we hear in the funnels. It's like, oh, do sell this small product and then you upsell and then you upsell. To me, it's not as humane as having them gently discover your value and your content.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of power in giving people more choice than just saying, this is the way you work with me. As you said earlier, like it's really empowering, giving those options and allowing them to take their time, because it takes a bit of time sometimes to build up that know, like, and trust. And sometimes you can do it in one email. Could be just what people need. It could be really what they're looking for at that time, but most people aren't ready to buy straight away. So they want to take their time a little bit and figure out, oh, who do I relate to most? Whose methodology feels like it could be a good fit, and then explore that a little bit more. So yeah, I really love everything that you're sharing here. And I'm a bit curious, you talk about empathy versus perspective taking. Tell us a little bit more what that means.
Yeah. So I think kind of in this space of, empaths and introverts and people who care, we're actually pretty good at empathy. That's what I've noticed. Is like, yeah, most people come with empathy, right? That's a given. Well, we're coming from the heart. We're ready to talk about emotions. So this applies to your gentle sales conversations, the actual sales calls, but it also applies to your sales pages, your emails, all of that. It's good to come from empathy. It's good to come from the heart. But when it comes to sales, we actually also need to address the mind. And that's where the perspective taking comes in. It's like, well, if we're only saying, yes, I hear you, and yes, I understand, I've been there as well, but we're not actually showing them a different perspective and show them that we can help them get out of their stuckness, then we're probably going to be struggling a bit with sales. So sales is not just about empathy. It's also about the head and the thoughts, getting into what people are thinking. And they're not necessarily saying that in the sales conversations, but they might be thinking it. So we need to be able to kind of almost read their thoughts and not just their emotions, and then give them perspective and say, yes, I know where you are. And what if you think about it like this? And, what if, or I have done this with another client, and that's how you get out of this situation. So really showing them a different perspective as well. And that also actually reminds me of permission giving, because oftentimes clients they're stuck, but actually their intuition tells them the right way. They just need to hear from someone like us that they have permission to actually do it. And then we can tell them, look, I've been doing this for years this way, the way you wanted to do it, and it works. So I give you permission, give yourself permission to actually do it that way. So that's the difference between just empathy and perspective taking.
I think that's such a powerful point, because as you say, if we are business owners, particularly coaches and consultants and service business owners, we're here to help people. So
Right.
we have these sales calls. And this is where I got stuck for a long time. We have these sales calls, we show empathy, I really understand, and then we tell them what to do, or we give them some suggestions. So they go away and think, oh, I'm fixed now, I know what to do. And we're selling them short, because there's very rarely a fix that's that simple. So often, and what is the better way to go, as you say, is to give them this perspective, help them see an alternative way of doing it, helping them see their challenges from a new perspective in a different way, and show them that there is an alternative. And therefore, you're not stuck down there with them, but you're helping lift them. And that's when you can have this influence and help them transform. You can't do that if you're there in the trenches, go, oh, they're there. If you're down there with them, you can't raise them up. So having this perspective and helping them see a different alternative and showing them that there is a process that will take them to where they want to go, and then marries up this emotion and the logic together, which is really powerful. So I really love that idea of, taking that perspective and helping them see an alternative, and then have that discussion around what could this alternative do for you? What would that feel like? And have them show you if that would work for them. And then you can make the sale with complete integrity, knowing, yes, this is going to be great for them. I can't wait to help them get this result. And they feel really confident in that decision as well, which is really so important. But I think when people come to a sales call, they've taken a really brave step, because they are putting their hand up and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. And it takes a lot of courage. So getting to know us and feeling nurtured already before they come on that call is great. But if they put their hand up and say, I'm struggling, and then you kind of beat them up on that call and say, yeah, you're so stupid, you need this product. There's terms of making them feel stupid for not saying yes. I think that's what you're sharing, is a really powerful alternative to that, I think.
I like what you said about, being down there in the trenches, or actually helping them climb up. And the other kind of quote that comes up is the jar. You can't see the label of the jar you're sitting in. So the different perspective is actually from someone who's outside of the jar. And that's your role in that sales conversation. And yes, you're right. It's super, what's the word I'm looking for? Vulnerable to come and say, yes, I need help with that, right? And so often what I hear from my people is like, they go on these sales calls, and then, like you said, they're just kind of like, either they're not actually heard and seen, and they're not confirmed in where they are in their gentle sales path. So if I'm saying, yes, I'd like to go on a sales call with you, and then I already know everything about you, I've listened to your podcast for years and years, I know I've gone through all your free material, and I'm basically ready to just sign and say, where can we start? And then you instead, kind of treat me as if I don't know you, and you have to go through this whole sales script of, this is what I do, and here's how my product works. I'm like, I feel like a huge disconnect, right? So that's not human. That's not how humans talk. Humans don't talk at each other. They talk with each other. So I find that, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, this kind of vulnerable space we're in that gentle sales path.
Yeah. So if someone listening and they're nodding along thinking, oh, this feels right to me, this feels like what I need to create, or what I'd like to create rather, in my business, how can they or how can you transform your sales funnel into a gentle sales path? Is there any advice you can give on where to start to make that shift?
Yeah, I would say, look at low-hanging fruit. I'm sure you have created a lot of things already, right? A lot of content, a lot of, wonderful things that you have put out there into the world. And if you haven't, that's great too. Then every time you do create something, just think of it as a signpost, right? So instead of creating just this funnel, think of it as creating a web as well. That's another word for kind of the sales path with these different things. And so maybe look at what people are already consuming and see if you could add that as a signpost, and then kind of weave that into your existing funnel that's very narrow and that just wants the client to go from A to B. So in that funnel, I'm thinking about, an email series, maybe add another email and another email and another email saying, oh, by the way, I also have this resource, and, talk about what people can get there. So just, start to create this web or this path where people can go into different directions. I think that's how I would do it. And you'd be surprised that if, someone, of course, if you're just starting out, again, it's a great opportunity to start that way. But if someone has already been in business for 2 or 3 or 5 years, there's a lot of things that we can transform into signposts.
Yeah. And I like that idea of, showing them the different sort of off ramps and signposting them to different areas, because we have to meet our client and join the conversation that's already going on in their mind. But that conversation, there's rarely just one. And often they'll have one point, oh, this is what I'm struggling with, but then maybe we'll help them with that. And then bit by bit, we're going deeper into their challenge. And so if we just offer one solution, then again, we're shortchanging them when we have, as you say, probably all the content to help them solve multiple problems and get to know us more and really induct them into that experience that we can offer by expanding it out and joining all of those conversations, but one by one, bit by bit, and gently saying, hey, if this is what's on your mind right now, then go over here, we have a great discussion going on, or a great tool, or whatever it may be. So I really like that idea of a web. But when we think of web, it feels quite expansive. So is there a minimum requirement to start up a sales path? Do they have to have lots of benches and signposts, or could they start with just one?
I think you could start with 3. I think that feels like a signpost. And I mean, a gentle sales path rather than just one funnel with one freebie. And one very practical tip also that I can add to what I said before is, a lot of us send out newsletters, right? And so these newsletters are usually just one-off content that we write. Sometimes we kind of use them on a blog or something. But a lot of times we create great newsletters, and yet once they're gone, they're gone. They're poof, they're in the somewhere in cyberspace. But what I've started doing is looking at the newsletters from the past and then using especially the ones that did really well, where my opening rate was good, and then using that content and adding it to my funnel or adding it to my email series, right? Because all of that content that you're creating with a newsletter, well, that is part of you, of who you are, is part of your web. And so every time, if you send out one every week or every 2 weeks or whatever it is, make sure you use that and add it to some kind of series that you have. Some people have a welcoming series after, the download of the first freebie, and so that kind of keeps growing, and it keeps pointing people into different directions, because in a newsletter, what do we write about? Maybe your current blog post or at the summit, or like anything that's actually, the summit might not be evergreen, but everything that's evergreen will then become part of this web that you just keep growing. So I find that really helpful to think about.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a big fan of never using content just once. It can be repurposed in so many different ways once you kind of switch your mind to think that way. There are so many, I mean, we used to do it in corporate, no piece of content was ever wasted. Even if we wrote a memo for a leader and it never actually got used, we would turn to it as like, okay, but what elements of this could be helpful for people? Because it was all coming from our business strategy. It was all part of something. So we was, oh, actually, this could fit it really nicely here, or it'll inspire a new piece of content altogether, but based on that. So we had our start point, our framework. So yeah, I'm a big fan of reusing what you already have. Sarah, you shared so much, and I really love this concept. I think it's going to fire off people's minds and imaginations in all sorts of different ways. Is there anything that you feel people need to know about a gentle sales path that perhaps we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, let me think. I have some notes. I'm going to look down a little bit as well. One thing that I put down is transparency, that I think is super important in this different way of looking at marketing and selling, is really, again, bringing more of you into your marketing and bringing this transparency, this honesty, kind of like this taking off the mask and really showing up as the human. And that means also bringing things in that are not only business related. I'm a big fan right now of this, of saying blur the lines a little bit. So blur the lines between business and spirituality, blur the lines between business and personal. We're in this time now where we're no longer in the industrial revolution, right? Where people just separate work from personal life. So I think that's what's resonating with people right now, with humans right now. And people are buying people, that we know that. And in order to really show who you are, you need to go a little bit into the vulnerable space and go into the blurring the lines a little bit. So that's what I'd like to give as a permission slip, like really bring more of you to your marketing and sales.
Yeah, I really like that point. And it can feel a bit difficult at first to know, well, again, blur the lines, but where's too much?
Where's too much?
Yeah. So I think start with what you feel comfortable with. But when I used to do leadership communication coaching, part of that was teaching the leaders to be vulnerable. You don't always have to have the answers. You don't always have to be the expert, because when you are, if you're too perfect and you kind of put yourself in a place where you're unreachable, you can't really relate, or your audience can't relate to you so easily. But when they see who you really are, and that you don't always have perfect solution, or you don't always get everything 100% right, but you learn from that, then they can relate to that. And again, it makes them feel more comfortable coming forward and saying, hey, can you help me with this? I'm struggling a little bit. So I think it feels wrong because we've been taught for so long that we shouldn't show our vulnerable side. But actually, when we look at the people that we follow and how we feel about them and what they're sharing, very often we'll see for ourselves that actually the content we lean into and connect with the most is where they have been that little bit more vulnerable as well. Exactly. So yeah, I really like that you brought up that point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And we're talking about a gentle sales path, and I know that you have a next gentle step that people can take if they want to know more about this and get started for themselves. You've put together a gentle sales bundle that people can download completely free. That's very generous. Thank you. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about what is in that bundle and what people can use it for?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. So what's in there is that gentle sales path template that my son Simon drew for us. So I'm a proud mama. So it's basically just, it's not a 6-step kind of template. It's just basically a visual that helps you visualize, and then you have the benches on there and you can start putting in your signposts and going, oh, okay, so I could use this blog post as a signpost or this newsletter. Or so it's just like a helpful visual for you to come away from the sales funnel if that's not working for you anymore. It also includes a serene garden meditation. That's a meditation that helps you prepare for the sales calls in the serene garden, just to come in with this feeling of I am enough. And the idea of not necessarily needing that sale, but coming in to find the answer to the question, is this a good fit for us? Is this going to work, right? So the gentle sales meditation will help you kind of come away from this scarcity thinking and come fully into abundance thinking. And then finally, the bundle also includes the first chapter of my Selling Like We're Human book, to just see, is this a next step that you want to go deeper and maybe read the book, find out more about how I look at sales. It's interesting because the first book I wrote is Marketing Like We're Human, and never in a million years did I think I was going to write a book about sales. But then my people asked me to write about selling. So I come to sales from a perspective of, definitely not your typical salesperson. So if that's what you're interested in, definitely check out the Gentle Sales Bundle with all these resources. Thank you.
Fantastic. We'll add the link to the underneath this video so people can access it that quickly. And wow, what a complete bundle. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having this conversation and expanding our minds together.
Yeah, and you mentioned your son there, which reminded me of something that you sent me. I think it was at Christmas that you and your son had put together. And I think it's a brilliant example of a wonderful signpost, because it was a tool you can use to think about your business and start planning and doing things differently alongside a mandala to color. And so that you can really let yourself relax and your mind expand and almost meditate on these questions while coloring in. And I thought, wow, how wonderful. And, a real gift that if you can think of something different to give to your clients that is so aligned with who you are and what your business is all about, that tool really is. I just thought that was a great example. I forgot about that, but yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's called Marketing in Mandalas or Selling in Mandalas. And I think it's part of that idea of making marketing beautiful again. And that's really important to me. I know it's important to you as well, kind of like bringing this creativity back to marketing. So thanks for mentioning that.
Sarah, thank you so much. If people want to connect with you or learn more, where's the best place for them to go and find you?
Yeah, my website is humane.marketing. And I also have a podcast where you've been a guest on, humane.marketing/podcast. Yeah, otherwise on LinkedIn, and love to connect with you and mention that you have listened or watched this interview with Melitta. Thank you.
Wonderful. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our discussion and took away plenty of value. Let me know what your biggest takeaways have been in the comments or in the Dream Clients Club on School. Which brings me to what I promised at the beginning of the show, the details of the landing page challenge. This challenge will be run on the School community, and all you need to do is invite your friends and colleagues to come and join us there. When you have 10 people who you've invited join the Dream Clients Club, you'll be entered into a competition at the end of the month to win a done-for-you landing page and email sequence worth $1,500. What would that do for your tech headache and your marketing, and helping you attract more of your ideal clients in with a nice, gentle sales path? What's more, there is not just one of these landing pages on offer, there are 5 to be won. Plus, everybody who qualifies to enter that free prize draw will win a exclusive training with me on how you can create your sales path. How can you start to build your lead magnet so you can start to attract more of your ideal clients on autopilot without the hard work, with all of the value, while sharing lots of value out there in the process. To join the challenge, go to melittacampbell.com/challenge to get all of the information you need on how to enter and to win for yourself that done for you landing page, email sequence, and the exclusive free training worth $147. I look forward to seeing you in the challenge. Meantime, there's lots more value coming up for you next week on the podcast. So stay tuned. I'll see you next week too.